From disappointing the fans after a hopeful start to 2023, to the stats confirming that he's mediocre at best, here's why Jordan Poole is overrated. The young wing made a lot of progress this year, but after a hopeful start to the 2023 season, he's mostly disappointed the fans. No one expected much from back when he started out in 2019, especially when he managed a meager 33.3% accuracy from the field. Poole performed even worse from behind the arc, with just 27.9% of his shots landing in the basket, but he clearly worked on himself over the next couple seasons. 2022 proved to be a watershed year for him, because he showed significant improvement in his free throws, ending up with the highest percentage in the entire league, and he was eventually voted the 4th most improved player of the season. By 2023, Poole had a lot going for him, but unfortunately, he seems to have lost all his mojo this year. Now, if you look at his stats, you might think that I don't have a leg to stand on here, but hear me out. For starters, he managed to up his shots per game to a hefty 14.4 this season. But how many of those shots actually landed? Like, his three-point percentage is just 28.6, which is shockingly low for an offensive player. That's not much better than his 2022 showing, so even though Poole is trying to make more shots, he's clearly falling behind in the accuracy department. To make things worse, his haphazard attempts derail the Warriors' entire offensive strategy. It'd be one thing if he was leading from the front, but it's almost like the guy forgets there are other players in his team. Like, is a smarter shot selection really too much to ask? I'd feel a lot better if he just passed the ball once in a while, but instead, he just goes for brash isolation plays and messes up everyone else's rhythm in the process. Honestly, you can almost see the frustration on the other players' faces. I mean, is he allergic to the paint or what? Whenever there's a chance to run up to the net, Poole goes for a pull-up instead, and it almost never works out for him. He really needs to learn a bit of restraint, but in a way, I get why he's trying so hard. After all, he just got a 4-year contract worth $123 million. That's enough to make anyone sweat, especially if they know they've got a long way to go. His salary is over 7 times higher now, going from $3.9 million to $27.4 million a year, so he probably has a lot of pressure weighing him down. That said, Poole is in the big leagues now, so if he can't take the heat, he needs to stay out of the kitchen. Unfortunately, his stats can look undeniably good if you cherry-pick them, and that might be getting to his head. However, when you look a little closer, you'd see he really benefited from the easy schedule he got. I'm not saying he completely relies on home advantage, but you have to admit, he's played far fewer away games, and that's bound to beef up his stats in the short term. The Warriors played a lot of underdogs this year, which helped Poole cover up some of his underwhelming performances, but he almost always drops the ball against more competitive teams. The game against the Clippers comes to mind, because Poole scored like 9 points in the whole game, and he couldn't break double figures against the Grizzlies either. That's painfully low for a player with such a high-value contract, but I haven't even gotten started yet. The point count alone is just the tip of the iceberg, cause his three-point percentage against bigger teams is practically non-existent. The Bulls dismantled him pretty easily too, so he was only able to score 14 points, and just 2 of his 9 shots were successful three-pointers. Then again, at least he managed to land shots from behind the arc against the Bulls. He tried 7 three-pointers against the Nets, and 0 ended up scoring any points. Like, when he's up against underdogs, he acts like a golden god. But pit him against a halfway decent team, and it's like he's a kid lost on the court. I'd have cut him some slack if he showed potential in other areas, but Poole's an even bigger nightmare while playing defense. Look, I get it. He's supposed to be upfront scoring points, so I'm not expecting him to constantly squeeze the screen, but come on. The most he can do is a one-step defense, and that's when he's trying his best, which doesn't happen very often. Most of the time, Poole just stands there in guard position and basically just gives up the moment anyone sets up a screen. It's kind of funny because Poole's definitely not a fan of screens himself, usually preferring toe-to-toe isolation plays instead. Oh, and don't even get me started on his reaction time. You'd expect a fully fledged NBA player to have lightning reflexes, so either Poole isn't committing hard enough, or he's bitten off more than he can chew. The fact that he got benched in so many crucial games is proof enough. Don't just take it from me, Kevin O'Connor's basically already written Jordan off. After the Warriors lost to the Kings, the NBA insider appeared on a podcast and gave a scathing critique of Poole. According to him, Poole only showed up for 5 minutes because he's just not a good player. Honestly, I kind of agree with him, because this was the second time the Kings got the better of the Warriors, and Poole scored like 21 points in both games. He made 17 field attempts, 5 of which reached the basket, and after trying for 8 three-pointers, Poole only managed to land 2. Even if we give him the benefit of the doubt, his friction with his teammates can't be ignored. Case in point, Draymond Green's infamous punch. When he and Poole were training for the 2022 season, he got so angry that he smacked his teammate across the face. And do you want to know why that went down? Apparently, Poole criticized Green for being overpaid. Now, Draymond's been pretty expensive for the Warriors, and a lot of people think that Steph Curry's been carrying him for a while, but that's just not something you say to a teammate. It shows poor sportsmanship, not to mention being straight up disrespectful, and Poole doesn't even have the chops to back himself up. It's also kinda rich that he's talking about Draymond's money, especially considering how expensive he's becoming for the Warriors. Because of Poole's contract, Draymond's prospects of getting re-signed started to look pretty grim. Like, if the Warriors give Green another contract, they're looking at a tax and salary bill north of $400 million. I'd say Jordan needs to take a long, hard look at himself, because based on his performance on the court, he's shaping up to be one of the Warriors' costliest mistakes ever. Now, you might be wondering how he's still holding on after a mediocre season. Sure, he has a 4-year contract, but it goes beyond that too. You see, Kirk Lacob and Mike Dunleavy Jr. are 2 of his biggest supporters. Bob Myers will be out of the picture pretty soon, so they'll be the ones calling the shots, and as long as Poole is their golden boy, he doesn't have to worry about his middling skills benching him for long. Considering that the Warriors still haven't found someone to fill Bob's shoes, Kirk and Mike will be running things for the foreseeable future, and sooner or later, they'll have to make a decision about Poole. The thing is, Mike was the one that wanted to draft Poole back in 2019, so he clearly sees a lot of potential in him. And to be fair, Poole certainly showed promise at the outset. However, he hasn't delivered so far, and unless something changes fast, he'll either keep dragging the rest of the team down, or the Warriors will have to eat the cost and trade him for someone better. Add some context to the stats, and you'll realize he's a mediocre player at best. Between his lackluster accuracy, his amateur defensive technique, and his disrespectful antics with his fellow players, he's failed to put his money where his mouth is. Strong managerial support might help him live to play another day, but it can only take him so far. I just hope he doesn't do more damage before the end. So from the stats proving that he's a mediocre player, to the way he disappointed the fans after a hopeful start to the season, this was why Jordan Poole is overrated.